Does anybody else have any topics they'd like to discuss or any questions? Okay, I would like to introduce Dr. Kristy Daniel. She is a biology education and researcher and associate professor at Texas State University and a master naturalist in Hays County. She began her biological studies at Westminster College. She received her graduate degree in ecology, evolution, and organismal biology from Iowa State University and her PhD from the University of Missouri. As I said, she's a Hays County master naturalist and has received a host of awards for her endeavors in education and research. Her unique presentation, Can You Spot the Danger, will review a few examples of mistaken identity and why that matters. It'll cover some specific plant terminology that is involved with plant identification, including leaf shape, attachment, phyllotaxy, and inflorescence. Referring to poison ivy, she will distinguish some commonly confused descriptors that may be encountered in keys and what is important to document when submitting plant observations to iNaturalist. In particular, what photos should be captured and included to get an accurate ID. Thank you, Dr. Daniel, and you may take it away.
Well, thank you very much for having me here tonight. I appreciate it. So I want to go ahead and share my screen, if you'll allow me to do so. I think Betsy has to give me, oh, there it is, great. Okay, so hopefully you'll be able to see this, and let me, it takes me a couple of seconds to get this set up so I can see chat while I'm doing this as well. But you are welcome to unmute yourself as we go along, or write your questions or comments in chat as we go along, however you feel like participating. But I first want to ask you, can you spot the danger in this picture?
Is it the cliff?
Some people are saying it. So I got the cliff. Anybody else?
If that tree is dead, the limbs falling.
Yeah, so we got, sorry, it also gives me time to set everything up while you're looking for dangers in the picture. It's kind of a 2-for-1. So you can see there are actually several dangers in this picture, but most people overlook potential dangers that are posed by plants. Not just by dead plants or falling limbs, but by the plants themselves. So, hi, my name is Kristy Daniel, as Patrick introduced me, and I am a biology professor at Texas State. And for the next 45 minutes to an hour or so, we're going to take part in an interactive presentation about how mistakes in plant identification can lead to deadly consequences. So please, like I said, feel free to unmute yourselves or ask questions in the chat box as we go along. And I'm going to be asking you several questions as well. And if at any point you need to take care of any of your physiological needs, please feel free to step away from your computers as you so need. It's really nice doing this on Zoom. We got our Mab Labs needs covered, no problem. I can always go back to slides, cover anything you might have missed. So please just feel free to ask if you think you're lost at any point. I'm happy to do so. So I'll ask another question here. Is this plant safe?
Isn't the one on the left a Queen Anne's lace? It's not, well, it's not a native, is it?
This is why I'm asking you all. What do you think?
Is it hemlock?
Yeah, Patrick? Hemlock?
Hemlock?
Got Queen Anne's lace. We got hemlock. What do you think? Anyone else?
I want to say Queen Anne's lace on the left.
And hemlock on the right?
And hemlock on the right, yeah.
She's smiling. We must all be wrong.
Anybody else? I mean, y'all are the experts on this. Come on, you got this. Wanda?
No, I have no idea. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Even though
Um,
I agree that does look like Queen Anne's lace on the right. I agree with that, but I don't know.
Oh, on the right. Okay.
On the right,
So,
yeah.
What is it?
yeah.
What is it? Duckaz? The wild carrot? Is that Duckasma? Can't remember.
Daucus.
Daucus, yeah. But it would probably have a fuller bloom than that.
Oh, I love talking to like plant people when I go over this. This is fantastic.
I'm also seeing some really cool pollinators in there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I have better pictures of some pollinators later too. But what I really want to get at is right here is sometimes plants may seem to look alike or seem to look pretty similar at first glance, but really small differences can have really big impacts, and subtle variations in characteristics can indicate entirely different plant species. And y'all are really good at this. Oh, even Lynn's getting her husband in. This is big. This is great. She's got her partner looking at him. But yeah, as you can see here, there are, there's not really enough to kind of really get a lot of comfort level with understanding the difference between these, right? Even with this group of people who are fantastic with plants, may second guess themselves, but it's just really often a case of mistaken identity. Now, if you start looking at the plant a little bit more closely, you can compare the leaves. And in this case, the leaves are really similar. The one on the right, my right and green, I wrote this down backwards. So the ones on the left, you can see the dark tips. The ones on the right are actually all green, but they both look a lot like parsley, right? We could say that's kind of the shape these have. If you look even closer, the one on the left is going to be hairier. The one on the right, you can see these, and we say that's pubescence. If we say it's hairy, it has pubescence. And the plant stem on the right is actually really smooth, or we say that's glabrous. It also has these purple specks, which is a really big indicator for this plant. And now you can kind of see here, this is at the base of the inflorescence. This one on the left, you can see these leaf-like structures under it that we would call bracts. You can see it kind of at the base of the inflorescence, even at the base of each of these little sub-inflorescence up at the top. Whereas this one on the right, it doesn't have any. They're absent. But people can mix these two up. And if you mix these two up, it would actually be a deadly mistake. Because the first plant is commonly known as Queen Anne's lace. So you nailed it. It's also called wild carrot, whereas the plant on the right is often called poison hemlock, but it's also called carrot fern. So you also want to be really careful with common names, because I don't know, if I saw carrot fern, I might not think, oh, danger, danger. So Daucus carota is Queen Anne's lace, and Conium maculatum is poison hemlock. But this is could be a very deadly mistake. I mean, if you can just imagine, at first, your legs and your arms go numb, and slowly your lungs stop letting you breathe, but your brain is untouched and you are fully aware of your imminent death due to your mistaken snack.
How much of it do you have to ingest to get that?
Not much. If you just took like a couple of bites, or if you had a tea that was
Really?
made from
Wow.
the leaves of the poison hemlock instead, it would be a devastating way to go. But there are ways to avoid such a tragedy. There really are. And for example, if you crush up the leaves of poison hemlock, if you crush it up, it has a really unpleasant, musty odor. So that's another telltale sign. If you crush up carrot, it doesn't smell really bad and musty. So you want to pay attention to all of your senses with things, and you want to kind of be aware of these characteristics, and look for all parts of the plant when you're trying to identify things, especially if you're getting into plants that you're not too certain of. So why don't you tell me some characteristics that you think you should look for when you identify a plant?
With some
playing the waiting game.
with those that look alike, especially the daisies, I have to look at the leaves, the asters.
Yeah, the leaves are a huge thing to look at, and they're one of the most overlooked things that people don't look at. It's so tragic.
Bottom side of the leaf as well.
Yes, the bottom
Yes.
side of the leaf. That's even more commonly overlooked. Oh,
The
Jack's going
shape-
after
the
my own
shape of
heart.
The shape of
Yep.
the shape of the stem and what texture it is and so on. If I even brush against poison hemlock, I break out in a fiery rash.
And the
Yeah.
plant's habit.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else?
That picture on the left is really pretty. I just love
Thanks.
to look at plants.
Any other characteristics? Yeah.
I
That's
have a
awesome.
question.
Oh, yeah.
Who has poison hemlock on their property?
A lot of people in this area would, especially if you're in a riparian zone. I know it grows like crazy around 5 Mile Dam. That's where I take my class out to go check it out. I've seen it where we go birding with David. What is that place? Lauren, do you remember?
Hornsby Bend?
Yes, thank you. I knew you would know.
It's all along the Pedernales too, in Pedernales
Yep.
Falls State Park.
Yeah, it's all over out here.
Is it dangerous for animals as well? Do they get sick?
Yeah, they can if they eat it. Most of the time they're leaving alone. It's not dangerous for birds, but it is dangerous if you eat birds. If you eat birds that eat, so there have been people who have died because they ate birds that were just eating poison hemlock.
Wow.
So yeah, but yeah, there's a little bit of tidbit of information for you. I didn't know you could die from eating an animal that is eating it, but you can.
Do you know the difference in height between these two? Because the poison hemlock at Pedernales is can grow taller than I am.
Yes.
I know it's not very
Yes.
tall, but it's still high.
It is based on the environment. Poison hemlock can get typically up to maybe around shoulder height, whereas Queen Anne's lace normally gets up to around hip height, which I'm sure these are real precise measurements, right? But in different environments, poison hemlock will be a little bit more stunted, and Queen Anne's lace can get a little bit higher. So you don't always want to go on the height, and at different times of year, they're going to be more comparable, but more often than not, poison hemlock is going to be the taller of the two plants. But then you could get into different areas. Like I go to Ireland and we see like giant hogsweed, and that can get even taller than I am, but that can also be a really dangerous one. So basically anytime you get to a white carrot-like plant and you're not too sure what it is, it's just a good idea to avoid it, because chances are it's not Queen Anne's lace, and most of them are pretty nasty.
Is it dangerous to handle it, or do you have to ingest it?
Well, like giant hogsweed is dangerous to even handle. Poison hemlock is not as dangerous to handle, but if you do handle it excessively and you don't wash your hands and then you consume things, it can still be dangerous. So you do need to use proper precautions. But it's not as dangerous as some others. There are some other hemlocks that are more dangerous than that one, but you do want to use a caution. I go out and handle it in the fall and teach my students about it in the fall because it's dead. And even when we handle it dead, because you can identify it in its dried state pretty darn easily, because the spots stay on the stem and it keeps its compound umbel shape, which is what the flowers are. It can still be pretty dangerous to handle even then without the sap. So I still make them wash their hands and use precautions, but I'm not worried about them accidentally dying. So I figure it's safer to teach students how to identify it in that state than it is.
Is hemlock native?
In the spring. Yeah, so hemlock is, hemlock is native to this area.
And I have another question. Queen Anne's lace, is that bird's nest?
Yeah, so all these names underneath there, these are all different common names for the same Dacus carota.
Ours says next.
Oh, birds. Oh, yeah, I have a typo on that. My
Sorry.
bad. I will fix that. No, thank you. It was probably autocorrect and I didn't even catch it. You're the first person who's caught that too. This is a slide I've actually shown my students and nobody said a thing because they just write down Queen Anne's lace and leave it at that, or wild carrot. They don't even get past it.
Queen Anne's lace is not native, correct?
Not to Texas. It was native I'm actually grew up in Missouri, and it was native there. So yeah, I haven't actually seen it growing much here in Texas. It's not quite the right climate.
And I'm looking at a Wisconsin book, but it says poison hemlock is not native here, but we have a lot of it.
Yeah. Okay. So
It's
maybe
not
it
native
was
in Wisconsin,
introduced.
it's introduced.
Oh, it was here. You know what? I can double check that. I have my master file. I do not want to improperly speak. So yeah, I should look that up.
I have never
have-
seen Queen Anne's lace in this area, in the Wimberley area.
No, I haven't seen it down here. That's why it's not a bad one to get mixed up. If anything, there's like hedge parsley and stuff like that, but it's not nearly, it's even hard. It's harder to get mixed up.
I grew up in New York, and it's very, very popular. It grows. I saw a lot of it in New York.
There's lots of it in Michigan too.
No.
And we used to take dye, like strawberries, and get the juice, and if we put it in the water, it soaks it up and turns color. It was fun as a kid.
That is fun. And I was misspoken. Poison hemlock is it is exotic. It is invasive to this area. I misspoke earlier.
My
It's
trash
just all over
bag?
the place. It's exotic down here. It's just everywhere. Okay. So anyway, so I do want to kind of take a little journey. So some of you that know me know that I tend to go to Ireland every summer, but I haven't for a little while. Last year my trip got canceled, and this year my trip also got canceled, but I hope to go back next year. But one of the places that I like to go when I go is the Poison Garden, which is on the Blarney Castle grounds in Blarney, Ireland. And it's a fantastic garden. And what this is, it is a living collection of poisonous plants from across the globe. And they share some of the stories on the placards. And this garden has been active since the 18th century. And they have, I think, it varies how many plants they have at any given point in time. They do kind of mix some of their plants up, but they have a core collection of, I think, somewhere around 60 plants, but they can keep upwards of 100 there. And you do want to be warned that you should not touch, smell, or eat any plant that is in here. So just be warned. And this is, if you can see kind of, sorry, I'm on the wrong monitor to kind of highlight this right here. This is actually a yew tree. So even the trees that they have growing are poisonous trees within this garden. And this first cage, which I'm not going to highlight in the presentation, but this first cage houses a very popular plant that everybody likes to stop and take pictures of. It's cannabis. So there was some controversy. It was there, it got confiscated. It was there again, it gets confiscated, then they let it grow again. So, you know, sometimes they let it grow, sometimes they don't let it grow. It's always interesting. But like I said, there are nearly 100 plant species to explore. That number changes a little bit. Sometimes, you know, the government likes to step in and decide if they can or cannot have them. Sometimes they're a little too dangerous. Sometimes it's okay. But several of the plants are in cages. Some are free growing. It kind of depends on the nature of the plants. But one of the plants that you can find here is the castor bean plants, which you may or may not be familiar with. This is deadly when consumed in the tiniest amounts. And in 2012, a 42-year-old man ingested powdered castor beans, and he suffered a fatal heart attack. He thought he was actually consuming what he thought was a safe herbal medication. And they published this case as a cautionary tale for herbal remedies, and to know what you were putting into things that you were consuming. So he thought he was helping remove toxins and doing a cleansing treatment for his body by crushing up castor bean seeds as part of his cleanse. And he ended up dying from this heart attack. I would say this is a do not eat plant. This is what we use to, I say we, hopefully not we. This is what some people have used to create ricin. So it's also been used in bioterrorism. And there is no antidote that we know of. So while this plant may be beautiful, it's best not to plant it around areas that are frequented by pets or by children to avoid accidental ingesting. And this is not native to here, but it is, well, at least, yeah, but it is everywhere. Like I said, it is by, again, it's by 5 Mile Dam. You can find it all over the place. People plant it in their yards often because it has these pretty pink, sorry, the wrong screen. It has these pretty pink casings right before it goes to seed. The flowers can have little pink flowers and little white puffs of flowers. It has different male and female flowers, but and it has nice big leaves. Whoops. Big leaves here. They can get really big. This is a tiny plant. This one will probably grow maybe 3 times the size I am in height. So yeah, it's like a forest of castor bean. But you want to kind of use caution, and it can be confused with edible fruits. This is comparing it to lychee here on the side. But one thing that's different is lychee is a really fleshy in the inside, whereas castor bean, when it's ready, you can actually crush it in your hand. I wish I had some, but it's the wrong time of year. I didn't have enough time to prep, but you can crush it in your hand and you can actually hear it kind of crackle and pop, and the seeds will just explode out of the capsules. So they're pretty different there. And then here, this is monkshood. In 2018, a 78-year-old French man actually died after picking and eating a monkshood leaves while he was out walking. He actually confused this highly toxic plant with striped hemlock, which is, striped hemlock is not the same as poison hemlock. Striped hemlock is actually an edible plant that's often eaten with salad. And monkshood is so dangerous that the sap can be absorbed by your skin even if you just touch it or even if you smell it. So this is one of those plants where you don't want to touch it, you don't want to eat it, and you don't want to smell it. And this is so dangerous that this happened in 2018. It actually caused the Food and Safety News to, it caused them to come out with new safety warnings. So because they were concerned that more people were going to die because of foraging, because foraging is becoming more popular. So yeah, there was also a similar occurrence that happened in Hong Kong in 2019. So this happened in 2018, and then 2019, a similar occurrence. And so they actually revamped a lot of their safety warnings with this one. But it's not all bad. In the United States, less than 5 people a year die as a result of eating poisonous plants. So why do you think that number is so low? Oh, I think some people are speaking, but they're on mute.
Misattributions, possibly.
That could be.
Because most people get their stuff from the grocery store.
Yeah, most people are shopping at grocery stores, not foraging. Which one? That could be one reason.
Medical care.
We have pretty good medical care. Not everything has antidotes, but we do have pretty good medical care. A lot of these plants you have to eat quite a bit of before it's going to cause problems. How many of you are going around eating things you don't know what they are?
No, but I weeded an awful lot of them.
Yeah. So hopefully people are just a little bit more cautious about what they're putting in their mouths. So I do have I don't know if I can share files or not. So let me see if I can share a file. Looks like I can. Okay, great. So I should have set this up ahead of time, but
I've played a game where you have to eat those things. They are horrible.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
really,
So
some
I
of them are
have,
really foul.
but what I can do is I have a way to help you find the good ones. So I'll put it up at the end of this because it'll take me too long to find it. I forgot Zoom is a little funny with how you find files, but I'll put it up at the end. But if you want to start with something a little bit less deadly than, the difference between wild carrot, which actually makes really good fritters, and poison hemlock, or monk should, and, striped hemlock, or something like that, I suggest you pick up a pack of Birdie Bots every flavored beans. I would not use bamboozles because those look exactly the same, but Birdie Bots, and you can practice your observational skills to avoid the bad flavors. So only eating the good ones. I will post a key. I have a key of characteristics to help you to compare the beans. And I will post that in the chat at the end of this today if you want to kind of try those. But I do want to kind of get into how you use a key. Just really quick, you probably know, but I just want to kind of go over it. The difference between a key versus a field guide, just in case you're kind of teetering on the tip, if you're comfortable with one, not the other, or if you've ever kind of looked at it. Because keys versus field guides are based on comparing plants to a sample specimen photo or two. So it'd be like if you took a red jelly bean and you compared it to these red jelly beans, right? The red family. You kind of have the basic anatomy in here where you may have to cut open the jelly bean, but not always. They don't always show you some of that. But a key is a tool for identifying an unknown plant species by using these successive choices between two contrasting statements that we call couplets. And so like here it says the bean is green or the bean is not green. It either is or it isn't, right? And then you go on to where it says you line 2 or line 5, either go here or you go here. And for this one, the bean is not green. So we go to line 5. So the bean is white, gray, or blue, or the bean is not white, gray, or blue, right? So you just kind of continue on. But the idea is to get to the final destination, the correct choice must be made at each fork. And you have to start at the beginning of the key. If you don't start at question 1, you're not going to end up in the right spot. Some people try and skip ahead and they'll start at like statement 10 because they're like, oh, this one's asking if it's white or if it's red. I'm like, no. You can't just jump ahead. You have to start at question number 1. And you have to read both contrasting statements because sometimes the first choice may sound correct, but the second choice may be more correct. It's one of those games, which isn't always fun, but that's just how it works. And if a term is unfamiliar, you got to look it up. That's just how it is. And if it asks for a measurement, you have to use a ruler. You shouldn't guess because it's precise. I don't know about you, but I suck at guesstimating millimeters. I mean, I maybe go with like inches, but not millimeters. So you gotta have a ruler, and it's also, things are really, really variable, especially plants. Like I said, shoulder height, it's not really an apt measurement. Hip height, not really an apt measurement. And you got to look at several samples. So you got to look at several plants. It's really important to look at several things before you really decide. Unless you just have to, I would never rely on just one sample. Sometimes that's all you got, especially if it's maybe a rare plant. But basically it's kind of like a choose your own adventure book. So I kind of cheat at these. I don't know if you've ever done those. I always cheated. So if I ever didn't know where I wanted to go, I'd mark it and then I'd go back to it. So if I died or if I didn't like how it ended up, I'd go back to where I was and I'd take the other path. It's the same thing with the keys. So if you're uncertain, you just mark where it is and then go back to it and say, no, I didn't like where that took me. Just go back. And that's okay.
Sometimes I study the keys by starting with the plant and working backwards in the key.
Yep. That's a great way to do it. That is a really good way to do it. It also helps you learn what they mean by some of those terms because they can be really confusing. And the Texas key, gosh, it's like this thick. The key is freaking ginormous. And there's always errors. There's always errors in the key.
That Texas key was the bane of my plant taxonomy existence in grad school. That was part of our final lab practical, was working that key. So good luck.
Yeah, and you got to find those errors. So as soon as you find those errors, you mark them, and then you never give that key to anybody else. You keep that for life. But anyway, so because I know keys kind of suck, I want to kind of teach you, make sure you know how to do this without ever having to use a key unless you absolutely have to, because we're in a time and age where we shouldn't actually need a key. We're kind of past keys unless you are actually doing botanical research in a lab, like at a university. Hopefully you actually don't need a key, which is not a bad thing. We have a lot of tools at our disposal, but we still need to know what we need to document for it. So I want to focus on probably what I consider the two most important parts of flowering plants that you can observe without collecting a specimen. Because a lot of times our specimens, especially in Texas, are on private property, and it may not be your private property, or we're on like a state park where you really shouldn't be collecting plants. So I really focus on what you can look at and observe and maybe collect with a like digital observation. So like take a picture of it, right? So we don't have to look at the roots. I really avoid the roots. And so stuff that we can see and at different times. So sometimes the leaves can be enough, but the flowers or the fruits can also be really helpful. So I want to just really look at the leaf and the flower or fruit. So the first thing I always look at is the leaf type, right? So really when I'm talking about leaf type, there are ample things to consider with leaves. The first thing you want to check to see is if it is a simple leaf or a compound leaf. And so I know it's kind of hard to see in this picture, but what you're looking for is you're looking to see kind of where this little bud is to see if it's a simple leaf or if there are leaflets. And so that means it would be a compound leaf. So this is one leaf. This is one leaf. This is one leaf. So this is a leaf, it's compound leaf. So it has a bunch of leaflets, but it's one leaf because its bud is right here. This is a simple leaf, one blade, and its bud would be right here. And so it's really hard to see on this picture right here where those buds are, but I really like to do this one, you know, in pictures because you really should not be going out there handling poison ivy, but I want you to be intimately aware of poison ivy so you don't handle it. So what do you think? What type of leaf is this?
Trifoliate.
Yeah, this is a trifoliate compound leaf. And so this is the leaf. If you can't see it, just to make it glaringly obvious. And the common saying for this, right? Leaves of 3, let it be. Right? Yeah. So a trifoliate is always 3 leaflets in this leaf. You're not ever going to find more. Whereas compound, the palmately compound can have up to 5. It could have 7. So the other ones can have this pinnately, twice pinnately compound. You're going to see that. Oh gosh, it's going to be like heavenly bamboo. Oh my gosh, that plant. Oh, I've seen that freaking everywhere. I hate that plant.
Kristy, is there a specific term for the 2 leaflets that are down that look like they have thumbs?
Yeah, nope. Nope.
They're variable.
Nope. I call them the thumb leaves. But
they don't always
no, those are no, they don't always have the thumbs.
But no, I meant, is there a term like
no, they're just the trifoliate
compound?
No,
okay.
It's trifoliate. Yeah, that's how we call them trifoliate, just because that way it says that there are going to be 3 leaves. So there's going to be the central leaf, the apex leaf, and then you're going to have these the 2 other leaflets. So you just have these 3 leaflets.
There's also a variety that has 5 leaflets.
Not for poison ivy.
Virginia creeper has 5.
You have Virginia creeper has 5 leaflets, but it's not poisonous.
No. There's a version of poison ivy that grows up trees and has very, very robust stems that has 5 leaflets.
That has a second pair.
It has a second pair below the 2 with thumbs here.
I have yet to
Where-
see that.
where
I
did
know
you hear
that there
that,
can
Lorraine?
be, I know there can be mutations of poison ivy, but they're gonna have 3 leaflets. There may be an odd occasion where you get an extra leaflet on a random, but to see it like that, it might be a different species, but it won't be poison ivy.
Are
Well,
you, Lorraine, are you
I'm-
talking about a mutation?
No, in Houston, we lived on an acre and a half of native piney woods. And most of the poison ivy on that property had 5 leaves, not 3.
Oh, that sounds like Virginia creeper. Because
No,
Virginia
we had
creeper looks
Virginia
exactly
creeper.
like it.
No.
No, but Virginia creeper's palmately compound usually.
Right.
This is not.
Now we're talking about just an extra pair of the 2 lower leaves in your picture, leaflets in your picture.
Well, there are some other ones. There's a, hang on, I'm trying to open this, but my
But we
thing
don't
is
have to cover
behind
this
something.
right now.
No, it's okay, because there is I just got to open it up.
Lorraine, have you seen that documented in one of the books on that area?
No, I know it was poison ivy because I could get itchy handling it.
I just kind of looked it up and it says some versions of poison oak have 5 leaves.
Poison oak can have 5 leaves, and Boston ivy looks like it, but it's not. Boston ivy also doesn't. It's not going to cause. It's not going to cause you to
maybe
be
it was actually
allergic.
poison oak.
It could have been
that I'm
poison oak,
thinking.
and it looks a lot. It looks very similar, but it can have the 5 leaves. It's usually 3, but it can have 5. Because usually when I share, I'm gonna switch my share really quick. So this is one where I say, which one is it? So we have box elder, poison ivy, Virginia creeper. We also have, and Virginia creeper, this is a different Virginia creeper that is actually like a box. Anyway, another one, but yeah, I thought I had the poison oak on here, but it doesn't look like I have the poison oak on here, but it can look a lot like poison ivy with the extra little 2 leaves at times. Yeah. Sorry, I thought I had the poison oak on this, but it doesn't look like I do. Sorry. So I'll go back to the other one. That probably was what you were seeing then. And that would be in the Houston area. It's not as common up here.
You're right. I assumed it was poison ivy because of the effect it had on me.
I'm sorry. Yeah, it's nasty no matter what. Yeah. But yeah, so if we're going back to these leaves, yeah, with poison ivy, and the box, and if you want to think of, like I said, the poison oak, they're going to be pretty similar. They are going to have slightly different margins. You could look at it here. This one is where you would see a little bit more of the difference. So if you went back and kind of checked it out, they would be slightly different here. I picked just 4 margins. There are a lot more than 4 margins. Oh my gosh. If you're interested in margins, there are, wow, there are a ton of margins, but these are some of the 4 more common margins. This is just the outer edge of the leaf. And we just kind of look at to describe its pattern. Entire is just when it's smooth. Serrate is if it's toothed, kind of like a saw blade. Lobed if it's toothed or divided, but it's less than halfway to the ribs, but more so than just a saw blade. Parted is where it is
Deeply
Yeah, I said that right. And I meant lobed is where it's divided less than halfway, and then parted if it's divided, but more than halfway to the midrib, which is that center big vein that you usually see. And if it's like divided, like really where it looks like it almost might be a compound leaf, but it's not, we'd actually say that that is divided. And if it's like smooth, like bumps and not like a saw blade, but so it's not quite tooth, but it's just more like you would see like a Valentine's Day heart, we'd say that's crenate. And there are so many more, but I didn't want to overwhelm people with the leaf margins. I get really excited about them, but other people don't always get excited about leaf margins. So I just left it at these 4. And even with these 4, it can still be complicated. Because what type of margin would you say is on the poison ivy? And if you've seen this before, you might recognize how much this can be confusing.
What do you call it, Kristy?
Well, what would you call it?
Serrate.
You saw this serrate, okay. Anybody agree, disagree?
Serrate.
Serrate, got a second.
Serrate.
Well, it kind of depends on what part of the leaf you're looking at. Because this part is more entire, and this part looks like sort of serrate, but those teeth aren't really close like we'd normally expect on a like a saw blade. So it's partially serrate, partially entire, and it depends on what reference material you look up, what they call it.
What would you
Also-
call the thumb leaves? Would those be partially lobed?
What did you say?
The thumb leaves, the mittens.
No, you actually say they have a thumb.
Well, no, but like, would that be lobed?
Right. Well, so this one I say like this is partially entire, partially serrate with a thumb. I actually say they have thumbs, and that's how they're described. Those are actually called thumbs. Yeah.
Also in the east, they're almost always entire, very smooth on the edges, and they can be much more serrated than this.
Yep. So that's why it's also important to look at multiple ones, because it can vary by your location, and it can vary based on the specific plant you're looking at. So yeah, plants don't like to fall into our neat little categories of buckets of descriptors. My students hate it. I'm like, it's what it is. You can use multiple words and it's okay. You don't have to just pick one. You're not pigeonholed, and it's okay. So this is the other part that people really hate, at least my students really hate, is when we talk about leaf shape, because this is different than margin. I don't care about the margin anymore. I want to know the shape. So now I'm going to ignore the margin. So this margin I would say is lobed, but I don't care about the margin. I want to know what shape it is. So now when I consider the leaf shape, I don't want to confuse it with the margin. So I want to look at the overall shape or the outer area. And I'm going to think of like basic geometry, like draw your circles or triangles or squares. What is this shape? Does it look like a triangle, like deltoid? Does it look like an upside down heart, like chordate? Does it look like an oval? Does it look like a line, like linear? Lancelet, elliptic, which is fat on the base.
I agree. Oblong.
Oblong is going to be really long and skinny and kind of tapered at the bottom and at the top, but it's going to be kind of flat along the sides. So in this case, it's really nice. An ovate kind of looks like an egg, by the way, with kind of pointed top. Elliptic is a little bit more so than that. In this case, it's actually more oval because it's not flat on the sides like an oblong would be. An oblong's more flat along the sides. So I literally will draw circles and geometric shapes when I'm doing my plant sheets. So when I start drawing all my plants, when I'm doing plant sheets, I just do very basic shapes to kind of guide me through. And that's how I figure them out. And it's fine. Like, you don't have to be a great artist to kind of capture these details. In fact, sometimes it's better to not be. Like obovate is if it's kind of fatter at the top than it is on the bottom. So it's like the opposite of ovate. And these are also somewhat subjective. So again, sometimes you may have a couple of different shapes that you throw out there. It also depends on which one you're looking at. So you want to look at multiple plant leaves, especially because, for instance, in this one can also get pretty tricky because we know this is a trifoliate leaf. So in this leaf, you want to look at the overall, like think about the overall compound leaf. What would that shape be?
Cordate?
Right. So yeah, the overall leaf shape, if you want to think about it this way, is more cordate. But if you want to look at the leaflet, it's more ovate or maybe even possibly broadly elliptic. Kind of depending on how you view those. And so I would accept either, right? A broadly elliptic down here, especially these side ones, they look probably a little bit more elliptic than that top one. And that's how they're described. They're either cordate or ovate or broadly elliptic. And it depends if they're looking at the whole.
Sometimes the young leaves are much different shape than the mature leaf.
Yeah, and you always want to look at the mature leaf because if you're looking at the young leaf, they're still growing, they're still pretty variable, and you want to be careful not to look at the cotyledon leaves or the seed leaves because those actually aren't going to be helpful for identifying plants. It'll tell you if it's a monocot or a dicot, but that's about it. So you want to get past the seed leaves. So you got to wait until it actually grows and gets its real leaves, not the first initial leaves that come out of the seeds. Okay, the other thing we want to look at is the vein structure. And again, you're gonna be like, Kristy's not telling us anything straight after this presentation. I'm sorry, I'm probably never gonna be invited back. So with this, again, with compound leaves, we tend to just look at a leaflet to determine this rather than the overall compound leaf. Just to kind of look at it. And parallel leaves typically are found only in monocots, which are going to be your lilies, your grasses, but not always. There are some asters that have parallel leaves and they're dicots. So our rule of thumb in botany is you can never say always or never because there are always exceptions. It's just kind of how it is. But these are the common venation structures that we get. Reticulate is this kind of netted structure where you don't really see any pattern. Palmate is where it looks mostly like your palm. But more often than not, you see pinnate and arcuate, and we don't always distinguish between these two, pinnate and arcuate. Sometimes we'll just say pinnate. So you could distinguish between those two, but you don't have to. So in this case, it's kind of hard to see whether it's one or the other. So we could say it's either. So I'm not going to make you guess on that one. So you could say, yep.
That pinnate is opposite, whereas arcuate is alternate.
Alternate, yeah.
That's part of it. It doesn't have to be, but yes. But it's also that this arcuate is also more swoopy. I don't know if that's a technical term. In fact, I know it's not the technical term.
Like prunus leaves.
Yes.
Leaves of prunus.
Yeah. So pinnate doesn't have to be opposite. It tends to be, but the arcuate is always more swoopy and it tends to be more alternate. So this one is technically described more as arcuate. This is more technically correct for poison ivy, arcuate. But oftentimes people don't make this, when they're describing it, oftentimes people don't make the distinction between these anymore. Just knowing that, yes, there are technically differences, but a lot of times they're grouped together. What were we saying, Donna? I'm sorry.
Does arcuate also mean, apparently it doesn't. You probably answered my question already, but does it also mean that the veins go all the way from the center to the edge, the tip of the leaf?
Yeah, kind of like
as opposed to out to the edge.
I don't know. I mean, like here, they're coming out to the edge.
Yeah,
don't know. I
they
mean,
are in
is
the
it-
poison ivy, but in the picture of arcuate, it looks like that.
Oh no, they're coming out to the edge. They're not coming up to, that's just the way they chose to draw that.
Thank you.
That's just artistic styling. Yeah. Okay. So the next one I want to go through, because we're still not done with leaves, is the surface feature. And I got to tell you, if you thought there were a lot of margins, which I didn't even go over, you should see the world of pubescence. It's amazing. There are so many different types of hair, and I could just go on and on for days. So I decided to stop myself and just say it's either pubescent or if it's glabrous. That's it. You either have hair or you don't. Because otherwise, this would just be its own presentation. So there you go.
Could I throw something in?
Yes.
Flo says there are hundreds of terms for hairiness, and hairy is not one of them.
Yep. Yep. Nope. It's pubescent. That is, yep. Yep. There's so many. Oh my gosh. There's pages. And yeah.
I like the ones that are called stelli. When you look at a microscope, they're
Yes.
stars. I love
Those are
those.
so pretty.
Yes, I
and they get
know.
caught on everything. They do their job well.
It's just such a surprise that they could be that way.
Oh, they're beautiful. Oh, I love looking at pubescence under microscopes. Okay, I can't do that. Okay, so but when you look at, this is where, I don't remember who said it earlier, but why you got to look at the underside of leaves as well as the top, because this is our wonderful poison ivy. It looks glabrous, no hair, but then you flip it over, lots of hair. So even on the same plant, but I don't want to touch this to flip it over. So, you know, so you got to look at upper surface as well as under surface, look at multiple plants. And technically speaking, we could get into what type of pubescence this is, but no, we're just going to say it's pubescent for now. That's enough. Okay. So then, still not done with leaves. Then we want to look at the arrangement of the leaves. So this is phyllotaxy. I like saying phyllotaxy. And there are four big ways of phyllotaxy. You can have opposite. Actually, there's more than this. There's opposite, there's alternate, which is every other one. There's world, where you have at least 3 coming out at the same point. There's basal, where they're all coming out of the ground. There's a few more types of phyllotaxy. These are the most common ones. And in this picture, I know it's a little difficult, so I just have these nice little markings, so hopefully you can see this a little bit better. Can you see the phyllotaxy a little bit better? So you can see it's alternate. And then the other one is going to be the leaf attachment. And this is one that people often just assume. And they always, and my students really struggle over sessile for some reason, if it's petiolate or sessile, because they just assume it always has a petiole or something that holds the leaf out. They're just like, oh yeah, it has this thing that holds the leaf. And it's sometimes hard to tell if it has this really, really small petiole or if it's actually directly attached to the stem, if it's sessile. The ones that are perfoliate are pretty easy. The stem actually goes straight through it. If it's clasping, I like to say it's hugging, right? Sheathing, you usually see a little bit more so like in grasses and stuff. But most things do have, and most forbs, are petiolate, but we do have sessile and a few others. If you have anything that's like perfoliate, those are usually pretty unique. And there are a couple of other ones like May apples are a little bit different. Those are really good ones. So if you ever see anything that's different in terms of the leaf attachment, definitely capture that because that's a unique identifying feature. The other thing that I wanted to get to is going to be the inflorescence. And I really like this picture, and some people, it may be a little bit much to show, but I figured you all would probably appreciate this because of the arrows. This shows you where the new versus the old flowers are. So this is not just the structure of how the flowers grow, but also where the new flowers are versus the old flowers. So spikes and racemes, they have the older flowers are going to be at the bottom and the newer flowers are going to be at the top. And then you have like your compound umbels. So you have the older flowers are at the outside and the new flowers are going to be in the middle. And so this is just kind of showing you how they grow. Whereas at thirst, you have the old flowers in the center and then the new flowers are on the outside. So it depends on like how they actually grow. And I can share these slides with you. I think Lynn took a picture and somebody else took a picture. I'm happy to share these with you if you want the pictures and stuff. Like all the poison ivy pictures, a lot of them I've taken. I haven't taken all the pictures, but I took most of these pictures. This one I got from somewhere. I actually don't remember where I've had it for so long. But yeah, I can share it with you if you want. I can pass it on. I can email it to you.
Thank you.
But yeah, no problem. But like for this one, it's really difficult to see, but these are the poison ivy flowers. And I don't know if you've ever seen poison ivy flowers before.
No.
But this is an up close picture of a poison ivy flower, and they're actually grow in a panicle. And so you can see they have the older flowers kind of here at the bottom. And what they do is you're going to see at least 2 flowers coming off at a time, often more than 2 flowers. So it's going to be a cluster, but they are held out here. And poison ivy, well, I'm going to get to the next one. So, and here, this is that kind of the center part zoomed in here. So you can actually see this panicle of flowers a little bit better to kind of see how they grow. And you can see all the pubescence on here pretty well too. Oh, sorry. I was using my arrow to show you things and I was on the wrong monitor, so you couldn't even see it. But you can see, yeah, you can, here I have some arrows here to, there you go. You can kind of see the panicle structure a little bit better with the red maybe. But yeah. And the other thing is for fruits, if you don't catch it in the flower, that's okay. Often you can find plants that are in fruiting structure. It's really good if you don't get to flower, catch the fruits, but catching the reproductive structure of plants is really important. There are many types of fruits. Some are dry, some are fleshy. Of the fleshy fruits, the distinction is often made on the number and types of seeds inside and the thickness of the skin. And in this case, this fruit is actually a drupe. It's a fleshy fruit with a pit or a single seed inside of it. And poison ivy is related to mangoes and cashews, which also contain urushiol. And some may notice sensitivity to these foods if they come in repeated contact with them. So if you come into repeated contact with like poison ivy, like humans do, you can become sensitive to this compound over time. So you can actually become sensitive to like mangoes and cashews over time. And this is also why like people who touch poison ivy often can actually develop an allergic reaction, a rash to this. So like,
I'm not poison ivy? Is that poison ivy?
Yes. Yes. Oh. These are poison ivy drupes. Hmm. These are the fruits for poison ivy. So like, I'm fortunate, I'm not actually allergic to poison ivy. So I've actually gone out and collected poison ivy and laminated it so I can pass it around so people can see it. But every time I touch it, I risk exposing myself to this urushiol. And so I can potentially become reactive, but I also don't often eat mangoes or cashews to help limit my exposure. Anyway, so if you're interested, you want to know more, if you like all the pubescence, you like all the things, how many of you have one of these books? Anybody?
Yeah.
Okay, yay, Dick McBride. Woohoo!
I have the yellow one.
Yay!
I have something else. It's a laminated thing.
Yes, that's a great one.
You know it?
Yes, that's a good one.
It's really great because it's got it all in just a few pages.
I like that one. I haven't been able to, I don't know where you got that one, but I've seen some
people.
You
can order them on Amazon, but it takes weeks because they come from Australia.
That's why. Okay, yeah, I'll have to. I haven't ordered it from Amazon. I thought people were getting it from like the HEB, and I've just never seen it there. Well, so I really like the Yellow Book. It's the book I learned with. It is pretty technical. And it's all got hand drawings in it, but it has like every term you could possibly think of. So if you want a book that can be your glossary, your go-to book, I think it was first, I don't even remember when it was first published, but I had it as an undergrad. So it's been, I'm not going to disclose how many years, enough years that it has not gone out of date and I still use it. It's a great reference. I still make my students get this book. However, if you want a book that can double as like a coffee table book with beautiful photos, I really suggest the Smithsonian publication. This Flora Insider Secret World of Plants. It also has a lot of the terminology, but its pictures are freaking gorgeous. This is just an example. And it's talking about the inflorescence and showing you an example of an umbel right here. So, I mean, it's really pretty. So, and it also has really good things. It's just, you're never going to take this in the field with you. That's for certain. It's a giant book. It's a good coffee table book, but it's pretty. I have it too. Actually, David Wilmer gave me a copy of it as a thank you for something I did for him. I don't know. But I really recommend it. It's not all that expensive. So if you really want a book to learn more about plant parts, I'd recommend it. And for iNaturalist, the reason why I went over all this is because for using tools and stuff and avoiding, I'm trying to keep an eye on the time, but to avoid having to use keys and things like that, iNaturalist is fantastic, right? We have this community of people. In fact, I'm sure a lot of you were on here helping other people figure out what plants they have. But really, this tool is really only as good as the evidence that's been documented and uploaded for the community users. And it's critical to capture critical features and the identifying features in order to get an accurate ID. And if you don't include the key parts, you're not going to be able to get to the right species. And so when you're putting in pictures, I really, really encourage people to do quality checks. So in this case, this picture right here has a pretty darn good photo of the flower, but you can't really see the plant body, right? So I'd say this actually isn't a very good quality photo. And over here, the plant body down here is in focus so you can see the leaf, which is actually really nice, but you can't see the rest of it. And it's all really blurry against everything else in the background. So this is really difficult to make out. And so if I saw that, I might be able to help somebody figure out what it is because it's a pretty common native plant, but it wouldn't be the best observation to put up there. And I can say this because I took all these, right? I take bad pictures too. And here, the photo on the left is out of focus and it doesn't show the whole plant body or the features of the flower or the inflorescence. Whereas the photo on the right, it actually takes advantage of having a white background, which I think is, I was a little dumb on this one. I should have flipped it over because that's a freaking ruler. I could have had that for a scale. But it helps showcase the inflorescence and the flowers. And instead I have my hand for scale. So I have something else in there that still shows scale, just not as accurately. So getting there. Yeah, that was dumb on my part, but whatever. Whereas here, this one, you can see the full plant growth. And there's a close-up photo for the flowers and inflorescence. So we're getting to see these identifying features. And here you can see the identifying features of these wings on the petioles or the wings on the stem. So this is really good for this frostweed plant. And ideally, if you go out and capture at the right time, you could also capture something like this. And then you're like, oh yeah, tail, we've got it. But that's a pretty rare occasion for Texas. And you have to go out really early in the morning for that. But what's nice about iNaturalist is you can use the comments feature, and most people don't take advantage of the comments feature, which is really unfortunate because you can type in things in the comments feature. You can type in things like the phyllotaxy if you can't see it well in the pictures. You can type in things like the leaf shape or the margin, or you can type in things like this plant here is really sticky when it's touched. So to keep in what the smell of the plant is or the feel of the plant, especially like pubescence, right? that is really important and can be very helpful for identifying the plants that you just don't get in the photos. And this is curly cup gumweed. And if you've ever felt this or touched this, you know it gets really sticky. And then, so this is kind of my checklist. If you wanted a kind of like a checklist, a cheat sheet, what you want to have for your plants, you want to have multiple photos. You want to have the flower with the inflorescence. Ideally, you have a scale, even if it's like your thumb or something in there. You want to have the full plant growth. You want to have a close-up of the flower. You want to have details with the top and the bottom of the leaf. You want to include, make sure that at least one of your pictures, you can see the leaf attachment and the phyllotaxy. Scale needs to be at least one of the photos, some form of scale, even if it's, like I said, your finger or something like that. And ideally, if fruit is available, you also throw that in there too, but you can't always get fruit and a flower. So one or the other is fine. So this, I'd say, is a pretty good collection to be able to get to the right ID and have it verified to get to research grade. And if you go with a tree, this is kind of where you'd be. You have the full growth of the tree. This would be a horrible one for a naturalist because it's a cultivated tree, but there's a different issue there. But you have the full growth of the tree. You're going to have the fruit and the flowers, fruit or flowers, I should say. You have the leaf. You again want to include the shape and the phyllotaxy at a minimum. And with trees, you want to include the bark. We haven't talked about trees. I haven't talked about trees tonight, but bark is really important with trees. Okay, I have one last thing I kind of want to go over. So I want you to help save my cat. So those of you who might know, I have 2 cats, and Atticus, he likes to get into trouble. He is a bad boy and he's really sick. He's gotten out and he has eaten a plant. I caught him being a mischievous kitty and he escaped my house and ate some of this plant. And I need your help to describe this plant, not name it because she's not good with plants, but I need to describe this plant to my vet so she can figure out what he ate to get him the help he needs. So tell me, what do you see? Even if you aren't certain about the plant, which I bet you all know what it is, how would you describe it so that way experts and tools like iNaturalist could help you reach an ID?
Blue or purple flowers.
Okay.
5 petals.
Alternate simple leaves.
And they're hairy.
Yeah.
You call those linear, long and narrow?
Yeah.
Fruits
linear
like
or lancelet. Yep. What'd you say? Fruit? What?
Fruits like a cherry tomato.
Fruits like a cherry tomato. Yep. You would actually call those berries. Cherry tomatoes are berries. Don't put those in a fruit salad.
Margins entire.
Yep. Very good. That's a great one. Just ignore the insect.
Well, that's
like
a
to
rather
chomp on it.
unusual stem that's white. I mean, most stems are green or brown.
Looks like alternate leaves.
Yep.
We already say that.
Yeah, but the big thing is with the lancelet or the linear leaf, that's a great thing to note because this plant is often confused with horse nettle. And the biggest difference between this, which is silverleaf nightshade, and western horse nettle is that western horse nettle has really big fat leaves. And they have a really wavy margin instead of the entire margin. But they're both toxic. And the leaves, these purple leaves, are often confused with any type of potato flower because they're all in Solanaceae. So yeah, but thanks to your help, my vet was able to correctly ID the plant, a silverleaf nightshade, and get my kitty the treatment he needed. So Atticus is well again, back to his naughty ways. Yeah, keeps escaping the damn yard.
Is that Cicericium? That's beautiful. Look how big it is. Huge plant.
Yeah, it does well. We had to leave it at my last house. I miss it. But there are over, I think you know this, but there are over 5,800 recognized plant species in Texas. That gets very daunting to me. 558 of those species are grasses. So for me, that's great. I just crossed them off my list because I don't study grasses. But 326 of these plants are endemic to Texas, which I'm sure are the ones that you love to explore. And if you were to learn one new species per week, so that's 52 species in a year, you are going to know more plants than 95% of the people in our county. I think that percentage may drop down a little bit with as many people as in the chapter, as you said, 500 people in the chapter. So it might be more like 90% of the county now, but it's pretty good. So, and the big thing is true experts, they may only be able to identify even a percentage of those, even if they learn 52 of them, they might not be able to identify all of them by just site ID, but they know how to identify it and can identify it really quickly. Be like, oh, I do know that. And they may have to use a reference, but they still got it.
They know we know where to look.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
To recall the name.
Yeah. So if you're not 100% certain about an identification, should you eat plants you find on a hike?
No.
No.
I'm not hearing from everybody.
No. No,
She
no,
says
no.
no.
Okay, so can you show me with like
So
at
we're
least a
back
hand?
to the same picture, huh?
Yeah, mistakes in plant ID, right? They lead to deadly consequences, but you can learn to correctly identify them by observing those small details, right? Really getting to know those terms. It may seem silly, it may seem tedious or daunting, but they really do matter. Yeah, so
yeah. What was in that picture?
What, this picture?
No, that one.
Yeah, and this one, let's see. I'm trying to think. So I took this picture off of, I forgot the name of the trail. It's the one right off of Dante's. Oh, Dick McBride's here. What's the name of the trail they shut down for the Golden Cheek Warblers each year? At Purgatory?
I'm blanking.
It's Parizo.
Ah, that one. Yes, thank you. So there's a little bench, and this is right off of that. So in this particular picture, I don't know, because that's Croton. I know that there's well, for me, what would be dangerous in this picture would be the cedar. This is allergy season. That would be dangerous to me. Let's see. I'm trying to see all the plants that are in this right now. It's kind of hard because this time of year. Let's see. I know what's out there. I know that there's silver leaf nightshade in this picture. It's just kind of out there because I saw berries when I was sitting down out there.
Maybe
you know
that elbow bush.
That's really a beautiful plant. And then at night, the flowers almost not effervescent. What do you call it when they're bright? They show up.
Oh yeah, they do. They stand out. But yeah, there are a lot of things out there. I take my students out and we do toxic plant hikes. We also do edible plant hikes too. But when they go over the toxic plants, it's fun. There's some lantana that grows out there. That one, it's more if you handle it, it can cause your skin to develop photosensitivity, so it gets really itchy.
I get a rash very like poison ivy from beggar's lice.
Mm-hmm.
I have to pull a lot of it before I get it, but
yeah. But there's some good stuff out there. Like there's Brazil trees. Those are edible. And there's the chili pekin out there. That's spicy. Oh my gosh. But do you have any questions for me?
I have a comment.
Go
when you're
for it.
taking pictures of plants, I've had people criticize my photographs because there's something in it that they find attracting. That's the wrong word. Like a ruler. Now, I do it because I'm trying to identify the plant, not because I want a beautiful picture. If I wanted just a beautiful picture, I may not have what you need to identify.
Yeah, so that's why I said when I always try and put a scale in at least one of my pictures when I put it up on iNaturalist, even if it's, like I said, even if it's part of a hand or a pencil or something, because otherwise it can be hard to tell especially if you do up close pictures, like I do. So I have some macro lenses. It's hard to tell the size of the flowers. Because even like with the poison ivy, when I'm just going to go back, when I did the flower, whoops, I think I went back too far. I know I did. When you did the poison ivy, like right here, or even here, it's hard to tell how big those flowers are.
Yeah.
But if you kind of scaled it out, it's easier kind of just to see like the size of that. So it would be better if there was a scale in there, you could tell immediately. Yeah, so it can be really helpful. Because I've seen some things, I'm like, wait, especially with like we were talking about earlier with poison hemlock versus some other things, like giant hogweed. The scale matters because they look so similar. But if you knew that giant hogweed, shoot, the stem can be this big. So if I knew the scale, if I saw anything next to it, I'd be like, oh, it's clear what that is. Nothing else could get that big that looks like this. Yeah, so scale can be a dead giveaway for some things. Yeah, but if you're trying to do it for like what Betsy Cross does, she takes some beautiful photos that I've seen on display at like the rec center and things like that. She doesn't want to scale in that. No. So what you do is you take one with the scale and then you take the scale out and then you take your pretty picture and you frame that.
Does anyone else have additional questions?
Whoops, I just made that go away. Did not mean to do that.
Carol, I tried to log on using my phone so you could see me, but it didn't work either.
Kristy, I want to thank you so much. I learned a lot and this was so enjoyable. We are very grateful to you. Thanks a bunch.
Yeah,
Yes,
absolutely.
thank you very much.
I hope I didn't go too far over time.
Not
I
at
didn't know
all.
exactly what time it was.
You're always enjoyable, Kristy. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I will send the slides to Betsy in case people wanted those.
Thanks. That's great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kristy. I'm glad the cat's all right.
Yes.
I don't know. I might strangle him.
Yeah, keep him inside. He's eating our songbirds.
Yeah, well, he goes out, he's supervised when he goes out, but he's still.
You get the cedar waxwings right now, I'll tell you that.
Oh, there are jillions of them. And robins.
Yep. I haven't seen this many cedar waxwings or robins in many years.
Yeah.
I asked Craig about it, Craig Hensley,
Mhm.
and he said there was, one of the reasons might be there was a poor pine cone crop in a lot of places. And so they're coming here for food.
They're
Well,
drinking our bird bath water as fast as Dell can fill it. Wonderful. Lynn, while you're still here, how is Flo?
What's
I
going on with
haven't
Flo?
communicated with her in a little while, but she was fine and said she would like to start our taxonomy class again.
Oh, really?
When the COVID thing has resolved itself a little bit more.
Fantastic.
Wow. Wouldn't that be wonderful?
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, last time I talked to her, she was doing really well, but as busy as the rest of us with all this online stuff with teaching and all that, it's been interesting.
Flo's comment was she did some labs on Zoom and it was very difficult, and the hands-on aspect, she didn't think she could do our taxonomy on Zoom very effectively, and that's why she would rather wait till we could get together in person. And I get it.
Very good.
So Kristy, again, thank you so much.
Thanks, Kristy.
Thank you so much. Wonderful.
Everybody have a good night. We'll be back on March 8th, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you have a speaker yet?
Yes, the executive director of Tree